Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show with your host, Phil Tarrant.
G'day everyone, it's Phil Tarrant here. I'm the host of the Smart Property Investment Show. Thanks for joining us today. It's a Friday afternoon and I'm treating myself to a bottle of Corona as I record this about 4:30. It's a cracking day outside and everyone's gearing up for the weekend. A lot of people, I imagine, are probably looking through realestate.com or Domain, getting their sheet together about where they're going to visit and what properties they're going to see tomorrow. And I'm not going to be one of you guys who are doing that. I like to outsource my property buying and property hunting to my buyer's agent. I like my weekend to be my weekend, and I like to invest my time with my family on the weekend rather than going through open houses. But for those of you who are doing it, make sure some great tools out there you can use right now to help map your hunting. And all property investors, you need to be out there doing the legwork, whether or not you're outsourcing it or you're doing it yourself. Make sure you know the markets that you're operating in. Our guest today, and I'm going to use that as a bit of a segue into it. Our guest today is Chris McMullen. Now, Chris is coming to the show, and he's got a Asahi standing here, and we're just having a bit of a chat before we come on air. And he said that he spent more time looking for his buyer's agent than what he did looking for his most recent property, and I thought that was really interesting. So I'm going to pick that up and use as a way to start our conversation today. And we're going to get some other stuff as well about Chris's journey as a property investor and how he's gone about reaching his goals. Chris, how you going, mate?
Good, Phil. How are you?
Good. So you're a long-term listener of the Smart Property Investment Show, which is always good.
I am. I actually was referred to the program by a good friend, Linda, who I'll say hello to. She put me onto the show, and I think it was a bit of a turning point for me once I started listening to the show, because I'm not very financially sort of able. I come from a sort of creative background in my work, and I just found this show very easy to listen to and very easy to pick up the points and the things I needed to do, because it's one thing to know you can use your equity off a property to buy something else, but I think the big thing was, how do you make that first hurdle? And I think that's what I want to talk about today, is how did I make that first hurdle, and hopefully that helps other people.
Yeah. So you're saying a hurdle. Hurdle is typically something that you've got to get over. Is it more of a,
I think
is that how it's been for you, is it?
Well, I think that just getting that first investment property is probably the biggest hurdle, and then it sort of becomes a bit easier because you know what you're doing after that. And I think one of the things I wish I did, being a first home buyer, is think like an investor, because it would have really changed the way I would have bought and set myself up.
Interesting you say that. And just sort of sticking on the show for a moment, I see you've got a helmet and a leather jacket, so I'm going to assume you ride a motorbike of some sort. I doubt it's a motor scooter. It's a motorbike.
It's a Triumph Street Triple.
Okay, like a proper bike, right?
Yeah.
Do you tune in the podcast while you're riding your bike, or
Never.
are you one of these guys who needs to be really surrounded in a moment? You want to know what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I kind of, beginning of this year, started making a little habit of coming home and having a beer on Monday night and listening to your podcast.
Oh, great.
And that would sort of get me into the mindset where I just sit down and start researching and start working out what I needed to know and who I needed to sort of have on my side. When I was going into buying investment property, I already had a mortgage broker, and they'd helped me with my first property. When I told them I was going to buy another property, they sort of sent me off to a seminar. And, that seminar, they sort of said, they promised that I could get 12% yield. And
whose seminar? Their seminar or someone they knew?
Someone they knew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it still your mortgage broker, or you've changed mortgage brokers?
It's interesting you say that. No, I stuck with them, but
Okay.
I was just very aware. I think working in advertising, you get a good sort of bullshit filter. Yeah. And I sort of knew that I'll come to them when I need a mortgage, but I'll do all the groundwork myself.
Okay, that's important.
Yeah.
You can't, to my original points about, I don't want to be the guy out in the front line tomorrow looking at houses for me to invest in. I'll get someone to do that for me. But
absolutely.
I've invested in my education, so I know. I've gone and done that many, many times, and I know the drill, and I'm able to challenge my buyer's agent, and they look at, because I am educated. So can't outsource responsibility for education and decision making. And it's good that you say that. Yeah,
and I think there's a lot of people out there. As soon as you've got money to invest, there's a lot of people that want to take that off you, and they'll promise you the whole package, and you'll go through it. There's a lot of places out there. I'll hold off listing their names, but they will promise you pretty much everything. They'll take your super if you give it to them, and they'll do whatever. And I think they're the ones really to watch out for.
So you said that, I think you're a bit hard on yourself, but you're not as financially sort of literate or sophisticated as what you would like to be, but you're conscious of that. So you're saying that you're a creative guy, right?
Yeah.
But you've made this conscious decision though to be really in tune though with the buying decisions that you're making as a property investor and really understanding what you're trying to achieve as an investor.
Yeah.
Is that something that sort of happened organically?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I got more and more addicted to the research side of it, and realising what a buyer's agent was and looking into that and trying to find the right one. But then I found that what I really got interested in was working out where I was going to buy. So I initially thought Gold Coast, that'd be a nice spot. I like to go there for a holiday. It's probably the worst thing to start with.
Maybe.
Then I started sort of trying to be a bit tricky, and I looked at Newcastle. I thought there's a few prospects there, and I drove up. I stay at Seal Rocks sometimes, so I stopped on the way through, met up with the buyer's agent, Tyrone, up there, who was fantastic. The guy should be mayor of Newcastle. He knows everything about it. But it was interesting talking to him over a coffee about where to buy a property. I said, where's a good spot sort of near the railway line or good apartments? And he said, well, that's where you're wrong. That's where you've got Sydney mentality. In Newcastle, you stay away from the railway lines because they're industrial. And the other thing is that people don't buy units up here. They buy the little sort of workmen's houses and do those up. So that was learning just straight away.
And that's ground truth, right? Which you only get if you actually visit a place and talk
Absolutely.
to people.
And I think it's important to look at buyers agents that know their area in that sense, because you just get that sort of local knowledge. I looked at a few buyers agents that are nationwide. I think I looked at national property buyers that were looking quite good. And I was very sort of close to buying in Brisbane. Obviously listening to the show is a big influence. And one of the other things I learnt was just the difference between capital gains and yield.
Okay.
Obviously, I think you kind of want your cake and eat it too, and that's sort of what you're trying to achieve. But
you can't always get it. It's nice if you can.
Yeah, that's it. And I thought I might be able to get that in Brisbane, but I didn't see the growth that I was seeing in other places. And I went to a lot of different seminars. There's sort of Destiny. There's
Margaret's stuff is really good. Destiny.
Really good. And I went and saw the guy in St Leonard's, I think it was, and had a chat. But he didn't really seem enthusiastic, and I didn't really sort of. He told me they were more about teaching you how to be the buyer's agent. How to sort of give you that knowledge, and they have meetings, and that wasn't really what I was after. Then I went and spoke to Michael Yardley's guys. Yep. And they had a really interesting seminar. I think it was Dr. Andrew Wilson.
He's a domains economist. He's a knowledgeable bloke.
Did a fantastic talk.
Yeah, he knows his numbers.
He talked about Melbourne and how the first homeowners grant was going to kick in after July, and how there'll be a bit of a rush on properties sort of under that sort of $500,000-$600,000 mark, which was what I was buying. So I thought maybe it's good to get in just before that, and purchase a property in Melbourne. I went and saw one of the guys from their office in Sydney, and I told him what I was thinking about Brisbane and Gold Coast and those areas, and he said, I think you're crazy. I think you should just buy a place in Sydney, go for the capital growth and move from there. And it really sort of shocked me what he said, and I came away from it thinking maybe I'm completely wrong in my thinking. And I thought I could see what he was saying. So I kind of turned my attention to Melbourne, thinking Melbourne's half the price of Sydney. There's a bit of catching up it's got to do. And if you look at the sort of what I bought that place in Marrickville, that had done really well. Maybe I can replicate that in Melbourne.
So just the place in Marrickville is your principal place of residence?
That's right,
okay.
Yeah. Good. And what happened there was, amazing. Yeah, it's almost doubled. Okay. So I thought, I kind of like Brunswick and around that area in Melbourne. I've lived down in Melbourne before. I kind of know the suburbs and the spread. I might just focus my attention on that and try and do that sort of thing and just buy a pretty comfortable 2-bedroom unit. I liked the look of the, I didn't like the look so much. I liked the sturdiness of those 80s kind of 6, 7, 8 apartments. They're just well built. They last forever, and there's not a lot you have to do.
There's no lifts in there or swimming pools.
Exactly.
Sort of
you got no strata, and I wanted 5 k's out of the city because I know that sort of your growth sort of spreads like a ripple from the CBD.
Sort of like Marrickville, but down end.
Exactly.
In Melbourne. Yeah.
I had this weird theory. This is quite funny. If you take Melbourne and you spin it, sort of. anti-clockwise 90 degrees, it's almost become Sydney. You know, your St Kilda's become Bondi, your Brunswick, and that becomes your inner west, and all the suburbs almost line up, and you can sort of match it out in the same way. There's no science to that. It's just how I looked at it.
Well, I guess just looking at, there's a lot of commonality between Sydney and Melbourne in that you have, I guess, suburbs which have the commonality of, you know, what you have up here and what you have down there at St Kilda, Bondi. But St Kilda's, I wouldn't sort of call St Kilda Bondi, but you've got suburbs that attract a particular type of people that want a particular type of living environment. You've got sort of your hipster cafes and your sort of more grungy areas like your new towns, or it's not even grungy anymore, you know, like Erskineville or Marrickville, or, you know, that belt along the train line there. You have similar pockets of suburbs in Melbourne, but then you've also got your, you know, your Toorak's and your, you know, very expensive properties in the Melbourne belt, which are very similar to stuff you have in the eastern suburbs, or, you know, or Mossburn is very similar to those, you know. So there is a lot of commonalities between these things. It's just all comes down to the demographics of it. So you're looking down in Melbourne, and is that where you actually ended up buying, or what happened?
It is, yeah. Well, I took a week or two off work.
Okay.
Packed the dog in the car.
Yeah.
Drove to Melbourne.
So it wasn't on the back of your bike?
No, too long of a drive. I took the dog because it's nice to just get out on the streets and walk the dog. You don't look as suspicious sort of wandering around, which is nice with the dog, and you sort of see the area. And I just stayed with a friend down there, and I went and I lined up 6 different buyers agents. So National Property Buyers was one of them. Cohen and Handler had just started down there. There's Empower Wealth.
Okay. Ben Kingsley, he's a good operator.
Basically, and I came across his show from listening to your show. When you
the
did
Property
the crossover
Couch
show.
Man, really good podcast.
Really good. Yeah. Especially the first couple of episodes on their show. They're really educational. So I went and spoke to them, and I think there was 3 others, but I won't bother with naming them. And I think there were a couple of factors. I looked in the I looked for a property as soon as I got down there, and sort of Coburg, Brunswick, that interested me, and just sort of kept that as a card to pull out and ask what they thought of it. But the other thing was, I think it's just having someone you can have a beer with, you know, because you're going to be working with that person's going to be
like your buyer's
by your
agent.
side. Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure my buyer's agent's listening to me right now, and I don't particularly like him. He's hard work. No, he's not. He's a good guy. But anyway.
Well, the surprising thing was that I think there were some really experienced ones, like National Property Buyers and Empower Wealth, but when I showed the property in my meeting with Empower Wealth, I was pretty much ready to sign there and then. But I asked about the property, and she said, I've got that for someone else, but we can show you some other properties. And I realised that that was probably the detriment of going with these guys, is that you're competing with other people like yourself.
So you'd identified this property yourself, but Empower Wealth had also identified that as a potentially good property that they were working on for someone else. So it's not a bad, for you, it's a good testament that you're on the right page, because if those guys are identifying properties in the open market like that, it means that you've gone through the process probably
definitely
quite well.
And I'd listen to your show back to front, and I'd listen to their show, and their show is good because it gave that perspective in Melbourne, and
absolutely
I knew what I was targeting, that sort of 80s, maybe a front villa of a property or something like that, something that was sort of a good build, but no strata like you were talking about. So I knew I was in
high strata sort of
same sort of headspace as what they'd be looking to recommend. I wasn't looking at those new developments or any of that where they were sort of cookie cutter. So I had some really interesting meetings down there, and I learned a lot just by talking to all these people. And I came away from it thinking, the guy from Cohen and Handler was new. He's had a background in building. He was also a valuation. He worked in valuation for banks. And he was the only one that when I met up with him, he said, come on, let's get in the car. And he took me out and he showed me a couple of the sort of properties. And he was the only one that did that. And I sort of got comfortable with him and what he'd be like to work with. And we went and stopped at a few properties, and he pointed out some things, and I got a gauge of what he'd be like to work with. And I knew that because he was new, he didn't have anyone else. He'd be just going headstrong, fighting just to find me a place and make a name for himself in this new sort of place that he joined. So that was sort of my thinking when I came to sign with him and get him on board.
So to the point I made, that you spent longer looking for a buyer's agent than property itself.
Definitely.
So working with the buyer's agent, the idea is that they find you the property. So this is the journey that you've gone down to find a partner you feel as though best reflects the way you see the world and the way you like to operate and what you're looking for. And all the companies that you've mentioned, Cohen Handler, Power Wealth, mate, they're all exceptionally good businesses. You know, they're
Very good.
They know what they're doing. They're the good guys in this space. They're not going to try and stitch up with an off-plan apartment that they're getting a huge kickback on. You know,
I felt like Empower Wealth would be someone I'd go back to when I was...
Sounds like an advert for Empower Wealth, Ben. I know you listen to this, mate. I hope you're liking this.
I actually wrote him an email, and he responded really quickly. I thought it was really good. But they're the sort of place I'd probably go back to before I'd worked out the sort of location and everything.
Yeah.
But I feel like the location really determined what buyer's agent I went with.
So you purchased a place in Brunswick? Was that what you bought?
I ended up getting a place in Flemington.
Okay. So why Flemington?
It wasn't far from Brunswick.
Yeah.
It was in that area, and I could see that it was that gentrification belt was sort of moving out over that area. It was a two-bedder.
So your buyer's agent found you this place?
He did.
Okay.
I would say it took 2 weeks. We went through a few places. I'd get on and I'd send him a list of about 10 things. He'd come back striking out for certain reasons why, or he'd know something about that property, and we'd sort of have a little short list, and then he'd go out and look at them, take photos, send them back. And this was just like a mad scramble for 2 weeks. And there were 2 that I was really keen on, and then there was a last minute one on a Thursday. And he said, this one's going for auction on the weekend. I can get all the papers, everything in a line, and I'll go to the auction. And my budget was about $500,000.
Yeah.
And he said, look, I know this place will probably go for that, maybe a little bit over. We'll see how it goes in the auction, but I reckon their reserve's $450. So he went in with that bid and got it.
Okay.
I was sitting with my coffee Saturday morning at home with it on speakerphone, just listening. Good. And got the property.
So a couple of questions around this. It's quite an interesting scenario. So you're obviously a passionate property investor. You give a shit, and you obviously enjoy it as well, right? So, which can be a huge benefit, but it'll also be potentially detriment for you as well moving forward. And we'll touch on that for a second. But so in terms of this particular property in Flemington, 2-bedder red brick type apartment.
Up the back of the property,
standard.
ground floor,
courtyard or what was it?
It had been renovated. It's got a little courtyard.
Yeah.
So the person to sell it had done a quick renovation on it.
To sell it effectively?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't have to do anything.
That's good. And are you a handy sort of guy? You don't want to touch that sort of stuff?
I've renovated my place in Marrickville.
Okay.
And I definitely overcapitalised.
Okay.
That was a good learning process in itself, but I knew the less I could spend on it, the better. I might put it like a 2-way aircon or something in there just to keep the tenants happy, and that's enough.
Cool. So you paid $450 for it?
That's right.
How long ago was this?
That was just before end of financial year.
Okay,
this year.
June-ish?
Yep.
What's the rent that you received?
The rent, it was interesting. So he put me onto a little property.
Okay.
They recommended around...
The property manager?
Yeah. It was about $380 it was renting for.
Okay.
I wanted over 4. Ideally, I wanted 5%. Yeah. But the person next door put theirs up for $430.
Okay.
And we're advertising. So I showed the property manager who was recommending $400, and they said, all right, let's go in for $420. And they got it based on that.
Okay. So $420 a week. So you're getting a reasonable yield on it?
So that's about 4.6, 4.8.
Yeah, can't complain.
I feel like I kind of got to eat my cake and eat it, have the cake and eat it too in that sense. Like it was I think there'll be a good growth in that area.
So do you think you've paid what you think you've paid market for it? Or do you think you've got it under market?
I think so. Yeah. From what little I know, I felt comfortable with that, and I think that's the main thing. Yeah.
So what in terms of loan, did you do an 80% lend on it? How did you finance it?
I borrowed probably about $200 deposit back onto my home loan.
Okay, so did you already have did you redraw the money out of your current home loan, or did you refinance your home?
I refinanced my
pulled $200,000 out.
Yep.
Okay, so you got an LVR of sort of 50-60% on this property.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because you would have had to pay sort of stamps and legals.
And
all that sort of stuff. So you're not carrying a huge amount of debt on it. So you've used the equity in your principal place of residence in Marrickville.
Yeah. I would say there's probably
there's
about 500 equity in that.
Still in there after you've done this refinance.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've done this refinance, so you've got sort of 300 odd, 250 grand equity still in your...
Yeah.
If you spoke to my accountant, he'd be saying, hey, look, you should keep pushing hard. There's probably lots of capacity for you. I don't know what you earn for a living, but if you're a creative director, you're not badly paid doing that sort of work.
I've got no kids.
You've got no kids, so you've probably got a bit of spare cash coming through.
Yeah.
Is the idea now to buy more? Or are you going to try and accelerate
I think so.
this?
Yeah.
Is there any particular reason for that? You just want to, like to? Do you want to become a property millionaire? How what I mean? What's the goals? Because I know you're probably quite big on goals. So
yeah.
So what's the goal now?
I think I'd like to just... I'd like to work out a cash flow sort of in my 50s where I don't have to work,
Fair enough.
And that I don't have any ambitions to buy sports cars or be rich. I'd just like to have a comfortable income that come from my assets. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the goal then, to be able to create passive income. So
exactly,
you get to make a choice to whether or not you want to work, which is probably what most property investors want to do, right?
I think so. Yeah. If I can live on a farm up near Lismore or Byron and have an income I can live off, I'd be happy.
And so what do you need to do in order to achieve that then?
I don't know.
Yeah. How are you going to work that out?
I'm just going to keep going and see where I'm at.
Okay.
I think that's the best way to do it.
It works for some people, it works for me. A lot of people though would and if I sit with my accountant and Munzerl, hello, I know you listen to this, mate. I imagine the conversations he has with me is probably different to a lot of his other clients, in that he would be having the conversation which says, okay, why are we investing in property? And most people would say, well, I want to have a nice passive income or a nice retirement. He would say, okay, how much do you need for that to be the case? And most people would say, well, right now it would be X amount of money, and then they would work backwards and work out what it would mean in terms of how many, what value of properties you need unencumbered in order to deliver you that income at a point in time, right? Obviously, goals change over time, and your goals today are different than goals in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, or 4 years' time. I personally don't have a number that I want to retire on. I just know that if I keep doing what I'm doing, it's probably going to be okay. And that's the way I see the world, and I'm quite happy with that, because I
like it. I'm the same in the sense that I like it to be quite fluid. And when I was 30, which is about 8 years ago, I had nothing. And I broke up with my girlfriend. I moved home to save for a place, and that's how I ended up buying this place in Marrickville. And I was talking to some friends at the pub last night. They were 30, and I said, look, you just can't compare my chapter 10 with your chapter 4. It'll get you nowhere. But you'll get there, it just happens, and just let it happen. You can't predict where you're going to be in your life, and it's nice just to let it flow and see where it goes. And obviously this conversation is getting a bit philosophical now, but that works for me, because I always know it'll be okay. Don't worry about it. But for a lot of people though, they don't like operating in an environment where they feel as though they don't have control, or they don't have direction, or they don't have a goal. And if your goal is to create wealth through property, that's okay. You need to understand what you need to do in order to achieve that. Whereas a lot of people won't want to operate in something which is so intangible or nothing really set in stone. They need to know, I need to do this, that at this particular time, and I need to reach these milestones in order for them to wire their brain a particular way to endorse the fact they're doing something good, or give them a way in which they can navigate this path, which is going to be lumpy or rocky or bumpy or whatever, but stay on the course. Whereas guys like myself, and it sounds like guys like you, quite happy for it to sort of go with the flow a little bit and see opportunities when they arise and move quickly to do it, but still have the confidence that, I don't, when I go to bed at night, I don't sit there worrying about my property portfolio. I worry about other things, right? That's it.
So I'm okay with that. So the point I made beforehand, you've spent all this time to shop around, in inverted commas, for a buyer's agent, and I'm very pro buyer's agents. Some exceptional ones out there. You mentioned some. I use a very good buyer's agent. I think they're a huge asset to realise the goal of creating wealth through property. But do you feel now that you could potentially be one of those guys who is hard to have as a client? So I'll frame that in, I look at my relationship with my buyer's agent who'll call me up. I'll go, I'm ready to buy. You know what I'm trying to do. These sort of stuff I'm looking for. This is, my portfolio right now. Here's the sort of assets. Go and find them for me. Then I go away and find them. Whereas you're sort of like, hey, I really like these things. Are these correct? Do you think these are the right properties? Do you think you're stepping into the toes of what you're paying the buyer's agent to do, and therefore you might be quite difficult to build a relationship with? Or do you think that actually works for the buyer's agent you're working with?
I think I'm fortunate in my work that my job is to annoy people to get a good job and the end result. and it's it's like a.
I get that, by the way. I know what you mean.
It's almost that process of labour is forgotten once the baby's born.
Yeah.
All the sort of hardships and everything you go through. Once you've got the end result, that's all that you reflect on. So I don't mind being a pain in the arse through the buying process, as long as we both achieve the goal at the end. And I say we because I feel like it's a bit of a partnership with your buyer's agent.
Has to be a partnership. And would you say, sorry, what's your buyer's agent's name?
It was Brad.
Brad. So would you say Brad enjoyed the process of working with you on helping you secure that property?
And he stayed with me. There's been the odd problem here and there, and he goes over and checks it out, or he'll give me updates on the place. So he was probably around the same age, and we got along really well, and he just really looked out for me. Whereas I feel like some of the other buyer's agents, it would have been after the sale they switch off. Yeah.
Well, you got to feel comfortable with the person. So we talk about this A team, right? Your accountant, your broker, your buyer's agent, your property manager, all this sort of stuff. So you need to actually like them as a person. They've got to be able to operate the same way. And a good buyer's agent or a good accountant will be malleable enough to actually, change the way they deliver service to an investor so it best suits them, right? And that's what you expect. But organically, you've got to be able to enjoy each other's company because there will be friction at points. There's always friction in any relationship. It doesn't matter what it is. So if you've got a good set of ground rules, a good relationship, or a good level of trust and respect, that when that friction does happen, you can get through it okay, and it's not personal. It's just okay, let's sort this out and move on. And it is, to your point, it's a genuine partnership. So
I think you've always got to remind yourself that you're the one with the $500,000 in your pocket or the bank's money, and you shouldn't be bullied. You're the one that's got the money, and they're working for you. So it's fine if you're, a little bit of a pain here and there, but you do want to sort of find someone based on personality that you will get along with. And if you do say the wrong thing or they say the wrong thing, at times you'll smooth that out and you'll get over it.
Yeah, you need to. So you purchased in just before end of financial year, so June time?
That was the goal.
That was the goal. So you set yourself a goal?
I set myself a goal of buying a place in 6 months.
Okay.
And I started listening to your show at the beginning of the year. Yeah. And that's sort of where my journey began. Okay. So I kind of feel like this is the show I wanted to listen to, this particular one of buying that first property and what are the sort of steps you have to go through to do that, because I feel like that's the hardest. So if
you're going to call me out on anything I've said over the 6 months you've been listening to me or anything I've done that's annoyed you, is there anything at all? I'm quite sort of, I can cop it, but is there anything at all? What do you think I could do better in terms of, the reason why I do this is to help guys like yourself expand their knowledge and their education and go out and make decisions to improve the quality of life and invest in property and stuff. So what can I do better, do you think?
I think you're doing everything right. Yeah. I think it's what you're doing that no one else is doing. It's just keeping that casual chat and making the information easy to digest.
To work on, right? You're a creative director. You've got to give creative feedback.
I'm no expert.
What would you like to see more of, though? Like, do you like the stories of investors?
I think just if it's nice. I think it'll be nice for people hearing novice investors like myself. Like, I'm definitely not an expert. It's nice to hear people who are starting that journey as well. I think that's really important because that's probably the majority of the people listening to the show. Most of the people that know what they're doing won't be listening because they know what these experts are talking about and they're in that game. And there's a lot of people, like yourself, you're sort of linked to people who are already in the game, whereas I'm coming from somewhere where it's completely removed from investing and banking and that sort of thing. So I'm quite naive to it. So it's nice to hear it from novices that have done those steps and how they've done it.
So your start then was listen to a couple of shows and make the conscious decision, hang on a second, I need to be more educated in order for me to do what I want to do. That's cool. So your start was the decision to actually invest in your personal development around property and property investment and get educated. So, and you've only just really begun, right? I still educate myself every day. I've learned lots just from chatting to you. So now how are you going to go from, you've got a principal place of residence, so I won't call that investment property. How are you going to go from one property to many properties? What's next?
I know, it's really, I found that really amazing, the way that some people I spoke to said you could probably buy 2 or 3 properties if you went to remote areas. But that felt quite risky to me. I thought my first property investment, I'm just going to play it safe. I'll just go that, stay within my budget and go within 5Ks of a city, a CBD. And play it safe in that sense. I might sort of move out a little bit further and take a bit more risk. But I was really cautious of some places like Invested and things like that, where you'll go and pay them to go out, find a place for you and allocate a place. There's something just didn't feel right about that. There are a lot of places out there that just, something just jarred with me. And then the fact that if I wasn't interested, they were constantly ringing me. I thought, if you guys are ringing me, chasing me, then there's something wrong there.
Yeah, different strokes for different folks,
It's
and
true.
this goes back to, there's some very good people out there that can help Australians down this path, and I think over time you'll see there'll be greater regulation in property investment advice. There's still some way to go, and Pippa, the Property Investment Professionals Australia, working hard to try and work with government to get some of this in place. But it still comes down to, caveat emptor or whatever it is, buyer beware. Yeah, you need to, you cannot outsource responsibility for investing in property with other people. That said, you can use other people to support you to do it, and this is the path that you're going down. So it's really exciting. It's if you could go back to yourself sort of 6 months, a year ago, before you started down this path, and could grab yourself and give you a good old shake, what would you say to yourself?
I think I'm glad you ask this of everyone. I've always thought about this and reflected on it, and most people say, I wish I bought earlier.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case for me, because I know I would have made a mistake. And in property investment, that's a really expensive mistake, and that can set you back a couple of years. I think everything sort of happened at the right time. I think I was lucky that I had, the education of these podcasts and the information that's available out there on the internet and property chat and those sort of forums where you can get there on and ask those questions. They're just invaluable. And shows like this, whereas a year ago, if I was to do it, I would have made a bad mistake. And I think that's one of the valuable things I listen to on this show, is listening to other people's mistakes and hearing those guys that go, I bought it, off the plans in Zetland, and I'm still waiting for something to happen, or it hasn't gone anywhere. And that guy that was talking about the place he bought in World Square. I was like, wow.
Yeah, that hurt him.
Yeah, and that was probably my fear going into it, is I'd make a mistake like that.
It sometimes my mind boggles, and we're going to have to wind up and get the wind up signal here, but the amount of information available to property investors today, but people still get it wrong, and a lot of the times it's for all the same reasons that people were getting it wrong 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when it was less readable, available information, whereas a guy or girl in a fancy suit and a good sales pitch will flog them a property, and there's just no excuse for it these days. So it still concerns me and worries me when I hear about these stories, and I feel bad for people, right? I just go, shit, like, why did you do that?
Yeah.
You don't have to make those mistakes, because if you take the responsibility to educate yourself, or at least expand your knowledge base, or get second opinions, or whatever it is, you don't have to make those mistakes. So if you're listening to this, just don't go and make those mistakes.
No.
It's follow what Chris is doing and going slow, and don't overthink it, and go with the flow. There's nothing wrong with that.
The research is the most interesting part. I personally hated looking at houses on the weekend. You talked about that at the beginning. That was the thing I just can't stand doing. But I love that sort of location search and the strategy, and going on to realestate.com and looking at the investor map and seeing what sort of areas are red and orange and what sort of amounts, and working all that out.
It's okay with property investment to really invest yourself in the stuff that you really like doing, but the stuff that you need to be right across, or you need to be highly invested in, but is not particularly your skill set, or you don't really have the aptitude for doing it. A lot of people just couldn't be bothered with the admin, right? Because they hate looking at spreadsheets, right? A lot of that stuff you can get support for, but you still need to take responsibility for it. So that's probably the other thing. So Chris, we're going to wind up, mate, but I'm going to bring you back in a year's time.
Great.
I want you to have a chat to yourself. Chris, in a year's time, what have you done?
I'd like to buy something else. I'm in that acquisition stage, and I think the main thing is to try and buy a different property in each state. So I'll probably turn my attention again to Brisbane. I think things are going to start going well, Queensland anyway. That's where my head's at the moment. That might change in 6 months, we'll see. But that's the goal at the moment.
It's good.
And I'd love to come back on the show and
let's do it, mate. It's and keep in touch. I want to know how you're going. And,
yeah, definitely.
I'd probably give up that motorbike thing, mate. They're dangerous, but I'm not going to say anything. Really enjoyed the chat, mate, and I quite like the balance between sort of making wealth, creating wealth, and creating a nice life. But you're obviously enjoying the journey getting there as well, and you need both hand in hand.
It's addictive.
The journey's half the fun, right?
I think the disappointing thing was once I bought the property, it's like, Oh, what do I do now?
What now?
I've just got to sit still.
It's like having a massive property hangover, right?
Yeah,
you got to
it
wait
is.
till the next
It
one,
is.
but it'll come, Dory. It's
Yep.
good. Thanks, Chris. Remember to check out smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. If you're not subscribing yet to our daily morning market intelligence bulletin, please do. Be the first to know what's going on in the world of property. smartpropertyinvestment.com.au/subscribe. Chris, it's not too scary coming on the podcast. It's good to be on the
I
other
feel like
side
I'm
of
in the
mic
pub.
rather- Yeah,
It's great.
It's cool. So
With microphones.
you contacted us. So you just emailed us, right?
Just sent you an email.
Yeah.
It was a good bottle of red.
Yeah.
And I just
Good.
popped out an email and I forgot about it. And then Naz called me back
Okay.
and said, he really
Come
enjoyed
on.
reading it. Why don't you come on and talk to Phil?
Excellent.
So
So the
it's
email
really good.
address is editor@smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Email the team, and look, we're looking to share investor's journey and whether or not you sort of bought one investment property or 50 investment properties or 100. Everyone's got a story to tell, and we're happy to share it with the community. Remember to leave those reviews on iTunes. The team really does appreciate it, including Sammy, who's sitting here turning dials and making us all sound really good and stitching it all together. The feedback is important. It helps us also to grow the community. So please leave a review. We really do appreciate it. We're on all the social stuff if you want to check it out as well. Follow us, just search Smart Property. And that's about it. Some interesting stuff going to be happening over the next couple of weeks also with the Smart Property Investment Show. We're going to be expanding the network. We've had a lot of really good ideas and some great input from people, and we're listening. So watch this space. Until then, we'll be back again soon. Bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.